I'm standing in a packed clubhouse with a stack of city-stamped maps in my hands. The entrance fountain outside is a dry bird bath. Sprinklers are coughing air, and our HOA president is smiling. Like nothing's wrong. So I lift the pages, shoulder high, and say, slow and clear, so even the folks by the coffee urn can hear it. You didn't bury my creek. You buried your own water supply. The room goes quiet enough to hear the lights buzz. Her jaw tightens. The gavel hovers, and I can feel the spell she's had on this place start to crack. Rewind with me. I'm Evan Cole, and 2 summers ago, I bought a sun-faded little ranch on the edge of Sycamore Ridge in Riverton, Arizona. Not for the quartz countertops or the square footage, but for the thin chatter of a creek behind my back fence, 8 feet across, at most ankle deep, except when the monsoon rolled through a steady backbeat that made the nights feel alive. I'd sit on the steps and listen, thinking about the canyon stream where my dad taught me to fish, and how we used to skip stones until our wrists ached, and it felt like I'd bought a small, honest thing that didn't care what color the HOA said my garage door had to be. First weekend, a neighbor tipped his cap and warned me about mosquitoes. Said I'd regret water that close. I smiled. Watered my yucca. Didn't regret a thing. Then I met the woman who would try to kill that creek. Her name is Marla Pierce, and if you've lived under an HOA, you know the type before. You know the name fluorescent safety vest for authority, clipboard for theater, smile like a chalk line. 8 years as president, not because nobody wanted the job, but because nobody wanted to cross her. And at 6:02 a.m. on a Tuesday, she knocked like she had a warrant and handed me a $500 fine for auditory disturbance from uncontrolled water, which is a fancy way to say the creek sounded like a creek. I laughed because what else do you do at sunrise when someone tickets? God told her the HOA's jurisdiction stopped at my fence. She smiled that small winner's smile and said, "Water crosses boundaries, Mr. Cole. So do our responsibilities." And yeah, that happened. The letters started arriving the way a slow headache builds cream envelopes with the Sycamore Ridge logo, like a gold badge in the corner vector. Risk riparian overgrowth. Auditory inconsistency. I kept everyone in a red binder because hope is not a strategy zen. One afternoon, I came home to 2 board members and a contractor in a vest that just said, operations, leaning over my back fence like they were spotting a rare bird. Marla pointed at a leaf in the eddy, like it was Exhibit A, and told me they were documenting violations. Violations of what I asked. She said, ambient aesthetics, which is not a thing that survives daylight or cross-examination. But you know how it goes. The theater works on people who want to be told everything's under control. At the next meeting, the clubhouse smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. Retirees sat up front like jurors. Parents hovered near the door, phones in hand, and Marla played a slideshow that mixed stock photos of mosquitoes, a kid next to some creek that wasn't ours, and words like liability and uniformity zen. She clicked to a rendering of a decorative dry creek bed and called it beautification. I asked for permits and environmental review. She said, "You are in consultation," which sounds like authority if you need it to a board member. Moved to authorize remediation of the water feature, heads bobbed, the motion carried. And on the walk home, I listened to the creek's steady chatter and heard for the first time a countdown. 3 mornings later, low diesel growl, then that backup beep that makes your nerves itch. I spit toothpaste, ran to the window, and watched a yellow bulldozer crawl across our cul-de-sac. 2 dump trucks stacked with gravel, sliding in behind it. Orange cones lined my curb like breadcrumbs. To a bad decision, Neighbors dragged out lawn chairs like it was a parade. I hopped the fence. The operator throttled down and looked at me. I told him he didn't have the permits or my consent. Marla slapped the side of the dozer with her palm, like she was christening it, and said, "Keep going. You're authorized." The bucket tipped, gravel rushed down in a hard metallic roar. The water surged and disappeared. A small fish flashed silver twice in the last puddle of what used to be a bend, and then it was stone. I filmed everything. Called out the time and date. Said documenting the alteration of a live watercourse on private property. I leaned into the frame and said, "Must it? The board stands by me." And an hour later, the only sound in my yard was the strap ratcheting down the last tailgate. She climbed to the center of the new gray scar and posed. "Now that is clean." Some clapped. Some stared at their shoes. I put my phone in my pocket and promised myself to let water do what water does. It doesn't argue. It waits. Silence is not peaceful when you're used to a creak. The first nights felt like someone had turned the world down too far. The dirt at my fence went from damp to brittle. Birds took the long way around Marla. Threw a beautification coffee social and posted safety wins with a selfie on my graveled stream. I didn't comment. I trimmed hedges and listened to nothing then on day 3. My neighbor Mr. Lozano stood in his front yard, staring at a hose that was wheezing like an asthmatic. "Pressure's weird," he said. By dinner, there was a Facebook thread asking if anyone's sprinklers were coughing. The entrance fountain was dribbling like a leaky faucet. Marla blasted an email about temporary water interruptions and told everyone to remain calm, which is what you say on an airplane, when you smell smoke. And 3 days after that, the city sent a letter to the HOA about exceeding our municipal water allotment fines pending. If it wasn't resolved, I printed that one, brought it to the meeting, let the seal do the talking. The mood in the room shifted a few inches off its axis, and for once the retirees in the front row paused before nodding on cue. Here's the twist that changed everything. And yeah, I wish it weren't this obvious. I spent 2 afternoons in a brick county building that smells like toner and dust, flipped through old plats and drainage notes, and learned the creek behind my fence wasn't a random desert whim. On the original subdivision maps, it's labeled Channel 4B, a designated stormwater conveyance routed to the retention basin behind the clubhouse. From there, the intake pumps feed the irrigation loops that keep all those regulation height lawns green, which means the creek wasn't an eyesore. It was a vein, and by burying it under rock, Marla had put a tourniquet on her own system. I copied everything with the county stamp, circled the pump intake on a diagram, snapped a picture of algae blooming at the mouth of the pipe, and drove home past an entrance fountain that looked like a sad drinking fountain at a middle school. The HOA hired tanker trucks, hoses draped across medians, like IV lines keeping a patient alive. The smell of diesel replaced the smell of cut grass. Fees went up under the label temporary assessment. People started stopping me in the street to ask if it was really the creek, and I just shrugged because it always lands better when folks hear the truth. Bounce around their own skulls first. You know what I mean, the petition to remove her started quietly, and then moved like a brush fire. Once Wallets got involved, and 2 days before the special session, she stormed my porch without a clipboard. Fury loud enough to rattle the windows. Her small white dog yapped like it was getting paid. "This is your fault," she said. "You turned them against me. You sabotaged the system." I sipped my coffee and said the only sabotage I did was ask a county clerk for copies. Told her you can't fix arrogance with more arrogance. Told her the desert hates blockages. Told her she didn't solve a hazard, she made one, Neighbors slowed on the sidewalk and didn't pretend not to listen. Yeah, that happened too. The night of the vote, the clubhouse was standing room only. People who hadn't spoken in a meeting in 8 years took the mic with shaking hands. A man said he paid $400 for water deliveries. A woman held up a dead hydrangea, like a tiny white flag, and said, "You told us it was safety." The board shuffled in with manila folders and faces that knew gravity was about to reassert itself. Marla tried to sell a miracle contractor and a dues increase. The room groaned. I didn't make a speech. I set the red binder down, slid the city letter across, unrolled the plats with the county stamp pointed to Channel 4B, tapped the retention pond on the map, showed the photo of the intake with algae, said, "You sealed your own lifeline, and then something fragile and important happened." One board member said into the mic, "We acted without proper authority." The secretary stared at her, then at us. Someone said, "Motion." To remove a tired chorus of seconds followed. Hands went up, not all at once, but in a way that felt like a tide, finally catching the moon, and the secretary counted in a whisper, then again out loud. Pens scratched. Marla gripped the podium and said, "You can't do this." "I am dispo." The secretary cleared her throat and said, "Motion passes effective immediately." The gavel came down. And that's where the story on camera at least ends. No confetti. No victory. Lap just the soft noise a cheap mallet makes when a bad era ends and a room exhales. Later crews will scoop out the gravel, and the creek will stitch itself back together like a seamstress who never left. The fountain will remember how to sing. Lawns will perk up like dogs hearing keys. But what matters to me is the lesson. Underneath the mess, some people confuse control with care. They clutch and call it safety. They bury what they can't choreograph and call it beautification. And maybe that works for a minute, but you can't fake flow it either. Moves or it doesn't. Everybody feels it when it stops. So tell me in the comments, was I right to wait and let the break reveal the truth? Or should I have chained myself to the backhoe on day one? Where do you draw the line between community standards and control culture? Have you seen a board or an HOA or a tiny committee with a big ego twist? The word safety until it meant silence drop where you're watching from. And what time it is. And if you want the next chapter, the one where a creek comes back, but an apology doesn't hit subscribe, and tell me your story.